Ahead on NCBA's Cattleman to Cattleman.
On this week's special edition of NCBA's Cattleman to Cattleman, we take a look at the status of 3 key beef export markets in Asia. NCBA's Cattleman to Cattleman starts right now.
And now, a special edition of NCBA's Cattleman to Cattleman with host Kevin Oxner.
Hello and welcome to this special edition of NCBA's Cattleman to Cattleman. I'm Kevin Oxner. Thanks for joining us. This week, we're focusing on international beef trade, specifically in Asian countries. Over the past 2 decades, exports have become increasingly important to the economic picture for U.S. livestock producers. In fact, the USDA reports for 2010 shows it was the best year ever for U.S. beef export value. For the year, U.S. beef exports reached a record $4.08 billion, up by nearly $1 billion since 2009. The U.S. beef export value equated to $153.09 per head of fed slaughter, which is up 22% from just a year ago. And nearly 12% of total beef production was exported last year. Canada and Mexico topped the list of export markets, but no doubt countries in Asia are key to U.S. beef export success, as Korea, Japan, and Taiwan round out the top 5 markets for U.S. beef. Recently, a U.S. Meat Export Federation study team traveled to Japan and Taiwan to gauge the current market opportunities and challenges in those countries, as Brian Baxter reports.
For a team of American beef, pork, corn, and soybean producers, a U.S. Meat Export Federation study tour to Japan and Taiwan was a chance to learn how those 2 markets are different, experience their cultures and cooking styles, and discover the ways U.S. MEF is working to grow U.S. beef and pork exports in Asia.
Oh, I've had just a fabulous experience. It is amazing to me to see the impact that our checkoff dollars that I contribute and my colleagues in the beef industry to promote U.S. meat, particularly U.S. beef. And I am exceptionally pleased at how well it is received in the Japanese market.
It's been really interesting and enlightening for me. I mean, I understand that we've been send meat all over the world, but to actually meet consumers in other countries and to see how they prepare it, how they eat it, and to understand their perceptions of our product has been eye-opening to me.
It's been quite a trip. It's one of the first time I've ever been to a foreign country, so it's all new to me. We've been listening to some of the consumers tell us what their concerns are about beef or about meat in general, I guess.
Having the opportunity to come over here with members of the other groups, corn, soybean growers, Cattlemen's Association, pork producers, it gives us all a chance to look at the same thing, to get on the same page, and I think that's one of the issues that we need to deal with directly as U.S. producers, the fact that we're going to need to work together in these markets, the foreign international markets as well as our own domestic markets. So the more we can work together, a chance to interact in events like this, I think it's just going to be that much more beneficial for all of us.
The U.S. MEF Expo gave the team an overview of each market, including briefings on access issues, visits to importers and cold storage facilities, a trip to FoodX, the largest food show in Asia, and a chance to see U.S. MEF promotions in restaurants and retail stores.
First thing that has been surprising to me is how well beef is displayed and promoted in the supermarkets. We've had the opportunity to actually go into grocery stores, see how consumers see it, and by and large it is very well received.
I'm impressed. Yeah, I'm impressed. Yeah, it says American beef on their aprons. They've got a little display going on here with the We Care logo and then the red, white, and blue.
It also gave them a chance to really get a more in-depth view and understanding of what USMEF does with their support through the checkoff dollars on how we combine all this and work with these leaders and the target accounts in the markets to build that demand for U.S. product.
USMEF's promotion work is funded by USDA and producer checkoff dollars, and the Market Expo provided the team greater insight into what producing for a global market really means.
The export markets can't remain abstract in the minds of our producers. They have to be understood in a concrete manner. They're as important as the country elevator. They're as important as the packing house that buys the animals. And they have to be understood in a concrete manner. And nothing beats coming out here.
You know, I think the first thing we have to do as cattlemen, we have to look at the product we're producing and making sure that not only we're meeting the needs of our domestic customers, but also abroad. And with the potential here from Japan, from an export standpoint, I think we really need to focus on what they're looking for. And it's obvious they want a higher quality product from a marbling standpoint. And we can do that.
And I think for a cattle producer, that's certainly the message I hope to be able to take back, is how important these Asian and other foreign markets are to us as livestock producers.
The numbers back up the value of exporting U.S. beef to these markets. Sales of U.S. beef to Japan and Taiwan were both up sharply in 2010, and together were worth nearly $870 million. With the USMEF Market Expo team, I'm Brian Baxter reporting for NCBA's Cattleman to Cattleman.
Obviously, international trade is key to growing the demand for U.S. beef. And joining us in our studio today is Forrest Roberts, Chief Executive Officer of the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. Thanks so much for coming back to the show.
Kevin, thanks for having me on.
Begin, Forrest, in layman's term by telling our viewers, why is trade so important to U.S. cattlemen?
I think it begins with the notion that it is all about opportunity. And Kevin, it is one of the top 3 priorities here within our organization at NCBA. And if you look at what is a good statistic to help tell this story, is that only 4% of the global population actually lives here in the United States, and the other 96% live outside of our country. And when you look at where this growth is going to be over the next 40 years, we're going to grow somewhere around 3 billion people. Well, guess what? Here in the next 5 years, we're going to grow the equivalency of 2 Chinas. And so when you start to say, well, what does opportunity mean in terms of enhanced profitability for U.S. beef producers? It's around $180 per head for every point of opportunity we have in international markets. So it's significant.
And specifically, what's NCBA's role in that task?
Yeah, we have an opportunity to have a partnership, and that partnership is with the U.S. Meat Export Federation that's also based here in Denver. And so our job within this partnership is to kick the gate open. Our job is to gain more access into the targeted international markets. And equally as important is the USMEF's role to do the in-country promotion. So we work together as a team. But also what's important within that partnership is the work that our team within NCBA does in Washington, D.C. each and every day. They work with federal agencies like the United States Trade Representative's Office. And one area in particular that they're really zeroed into today, Kevin, is this Korean Free Trade Agreement, commonly referred to as KORS. That's an agreement that President Obama has supported. And actually, it's right now at the stage to where Congress just needs to ratify it and move forward so we can implement it. Why is that important? It's important so that we knock out this 40% tariff that's there today. And I think even probably more importantly, cattlemen across this country are so competitive, they want to make sure that we get this thing implemented before we get countries like Australia getting ahead of us with that expanded market access with a country like Korea.
Yeah, that's not only a short-term issue, it's a longer-term issue as well. And one other question. You said you were making a trip to Asia along with some of these organizations' leaders. Specifically, what do you hope to accomplish?
You know, we're having an opportunity of a lifetime to go into 3 countries in the month of June. We're going to go to China, Japan, and Korea. And our focus with that whole trip is to develop relationships, because trust is a big deal in any kind of an opportunity you have to develop a relationship with an international market, like whether it's China, Korea, or Japan. And our opportunity is to communicate to them how committed we are as U.S. producers to put the same safe, affordable, and high-quality beef product on their families' plates, just like we do here in the United States each and every day.
Well, I wish you luck with that trip. Thanks for all you're doing to grow the demand both domestically and internationally for U.S. beef.
Thanks, Kevin.
Support the efforts of NCBA to promote U.S. beef around the world by joining us today. Call us at 1-866-USA-BEEF or visit us at beefusa.org. Ahead on this week's special edition of NCBA's Cattleman to Cattleman,
It is amazing to me to see the impact that our checkoff dollars that I contribute and my colleagues in the beef industry to promote U.S. beef.
We'll take an in-depth look at the beef markets in Japan, Taiwan, and South Korea. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
You're watching NCBA's Cattleman to Cattleman on RFD TV.
Try it for 60 days and let's see the difference it'll make in your animal.
You have an all-in-one feed, it makes all the difference in the world.
It's been a very good product for us.
My chickens are really great layers, and I think that's because of how I feed them. They look more complete, they fill out really well.
You get exceptional gain, you get exceptional growth.
It does make a difference that we can see, day in and day out.
Take the 60-day challenge and save up to $55 on Purina feed. Sign up at purinadifference.com.
These days, more cattlemen choose Draxxin to fight BRD than any other brand. Here's why.
It works. We have fewer repulls, and the ones that we do repull respond, and we have fewer chronics in the end.
To retreat anything it's a lot more expensive than using Draxxin as a first time.
And the evidence backs up what most cattlemen already know. Draxxin cuts retreats by 50%. So talk to your veterinarian and check the online calculator at Draxxin.com. You'll see why Draxxin should be your first choice to fight BRD.
Basically what it's allowed us to do with our operation is run more cattle through in a given period of time. It's just really been a good product to use.
Do not use in female dairy cattle 20 months of age or older. Do not use in calves to be processed for veal. Draxxin has a pre-slaughter withdrawal time of 18 days. Please visit Draxxin.com or call 1-888-DRAXXIN for more information.
Welcome back. Since March 11th, when a 9.0 magnitude earthquake and tsunami hit northern Japan, we've watched that nation deal with the disaster. And our hearts go out to the Japanese people who have lost loved ones or who are still without homes and other key resources. The U.S. Meat Export Federation has been leading an effort to provide relief to Japan with more than $500,000 collected so far to help direct food to those in need. In the meantime, the USMEF Tokyo office is still active, and the efforts to continue the flow of U.S. beef exports to Japan also continues. Just prior to the earthquake, our crew traveled to Japan as part of a U.S. Meat Export Federation Market Expo. To learn more about the Japanese market for U.S. beef, Brian Baxter reports.
Tokyo is the huge urban center of Japan, a nation of 127 million consumers where about 60% of the food is imported. Prior to the BSE issue in 2003, Japan was the #1 export market for U.S. beef, valued at more than $1.3 billion. Since the market reopened, Japanese consumers have been steadily making their way back to U.S. beef.
Definitely, the market is just, we haven't begun to tap the market potential here. The thing that hit me today listening to the consumers, I think, is that food safety is right at the top of the list.
I think by and large there's still some caution. I think when the consumer housewife has the chance to actually take it home, prepare it, they are very pleased in terms of the taste and the quality of U.S. beef. And I think that's our challenge, is to reach directly more of those consumers so they have that opportunity.
One of the effective efforts to win back Japanese consumers is USMEF's We Care campaign that started in 2006 and continues to evolve today to include messages about not only U.S. beef safety, but also quality.
And now as we're doing it, we're trying to show it also on a more positive, enjoyment factor. So now instead of having to worry about safety issues, we can show that, we care about, your family's enjoyment, or about, nutrition, or, different things like that that are of concern to the target audience.
We did have a difficult time, but USMEF did a great job to reopen the market for us, I think. So the promotion was really good. The We Care program actually worked out, I think.
But since Japan will only accept beef from cattle 20 months of age or younger, the U.S. beef supply available to Japan is still limited and the market opportunity still far greater.
The biggest challenge in Japan still is, the 20-month age restrictions. So that's something that, despite the restrictions, we're seeing a steady increase in exports here to Japan. So month by month, it's continuing to increase. We're probably about a third of the way where we used to be, so there's a long ways to go. We're still missing probably over $1 billion per year in export value that we could be returning back to the U.S.
And it seems like the Japanese people really enjoy U.S. beef and probably would love to have the opportunity to purchase more beef if we can just meet the requirements we need from a trade standpoint.
I think the most surprising thing to me was going into retail restaurants, even more so than grocery stores where they are featuring U.S. beef. And it does seem to be a very indication of pride in providing that product to the Japanese consumer. That certainly gives me a sense that we're doing a good job in telling our story that the quality of U.S. beef is remarkable.
In 2010, Japan was the third largest market for U.S. beef, reaching a value of nearly $640 million, up 36% from the year before. In Tokyo, I'm Brian Baxter for NCBA's Cattleman to Cattleman.
And joining me with more insight on Japan and the Japanese market is Greg Haynes, Assistant Vice President of International Marketing for the United States Meat Export Federation. Thanks so much for coming to the show.
Thank you, Kevin.
Well, I know you personally lived in Japan for a number of years, have family over there, and we can see from the video that it's an incredibly dynamic market. But I wanted to ask specifically what you know about what's happened in Japan since the tsunami.
Right. Now, that was definitely a major event, one of the largest earthquakes in the history of the world. A lot of damage up there in the Tohoku region, which is in the northeast area of the main island. Right after the quake, there was definitely impacts throughout most of the island, especially Tokyo and east there. They had power outages, trains weren't running, the infrastructure was really slowed down. People couldn't get out from work or go to work. They couldn't go shopping. The disruptions were pretty severe at the beginning. Fortunately, that has started to turn around. The Tohoku area is still in a state of an emergency, but fortunately only about 2% of the population lives in that area. They do produce about 12% of the beef, so it's a fairly large beef production area. But as the rest of the country starts to really recover and rebound, Tokyo is practically back to normal. They're still doing some measures to try and conserve energy and things like that, but the people are starting to get out and do more things. So what we've seen is that that there was a decline in exports just briefly during those first few weeks there. But if you look at the weekly export figures now, it's actually rebounded very, very nicely. I mean, we're actually now at levels that are 2 to 3 times as high as they've been even compared to last year. So you had a really big jump in exports the first 2 months of the year. You had that, which slowed things down, but now you're rebounding. And I think a lot of that really has to do with the fact that there are these concerns about radioactivity in the food supplies. Right. And the large population centers really haven't been impacted that much. They're kind of getting on with things and moving forward. So the demand is really picking up. And so as that demand continues to expand, domestically they're not quite able to make it. Other competitors like Australia aren't able to fill that in. And so again, the U.S. is really becoming kind of a key source for them for fulfilling that need.
Well, it sounds like great news to U.S. cattlemen. I'm interested, though, as you think about longer term, what it's going to mean to the Japanese economy, and therefore, is that good or bad for the beef industry? What can we expect going forward in Japan?
And I think it's definitely going to be very good. I mean, already, as I said, exports are up significantly this year. We expect that to continue. The areas where we're working and conducting promotions and activities, we've had to shift a little bit of that at the beginning, but that's pretty much back on track now. The beef industry contributed significantly to the disaster relief program that we have. So we've gone out and really been, starting to get very aggressive with that, feeding the people who need it. But I think just the goodwill that's going to be generated and the positive impact is going to benefit the industry in the long run as well. And then you're seeing a shift right after the quake too. The Japanese consumers were were doing what they call jishoku, which is kind of like self-restraint. You know, they felt kind of guilty going out and enjoying things because they knew that their country, you know, the fellow countrymen in the other areas were suffering and having a difficult time. So everybody was canceling parties and banquets and things like that, which are really big users of our product. But I think now they've really realized that that's not the thing to do. They realize that the more they do this, that it actually has a negative impact on the growth. And so that whole attitude is starting to turn around, and the consumers are getting back out there and purchasing. So I think, you know, things are really going to start taking off. Again, you know, we're one of the really the key supplier that's going to be able to meet this demand, especially with that domestic production that's been impacted. And so I think very positive on the U.S. side.
Oh, that's good. Well, our hearts go out to you, your family, and obviously all the Japanese people.
Yeah, fortunately, everybody, you know, in our offices and families that we knew, everybody was safe, so that was good.
That's outstanding. And we'll be back with Greg with more information on Taiwan and Korea just ahead. Stay with us.
Comprehensive, practical, powerful. Now's the time to put the power of DNA to work in your herd with the comprehensive Identity Profile. The inside information from Identity can help you make more confident replacement heifer and herd sire selection decisions, add marketability to your feeder cattle, make faster genetic progress, and more. The best time to get started is when you're already working cattle during branding, weaning, or bull soundness exams. Get started today. Visit iGenity.com or call 1-877-IGENITY to put the power of DNA to work in your herd.
You take pride in the beef you raise. Countless hours invested to assure a safe and wholesome calf crop. Why trust that calf crop to just anyone? Experience the new Dinklage difference with a long history and reputation for outstanding performance and cattle care. We use a combination of cutting-edge technologies and data-driven decision-making to establish our place as leaders in the cattle feeding industry. Allow Dinklage to be a part of your team in the quest to maximize your profits. With 5 locations to serve you in Wyoming, Nebraska, and Colorado. For more information on the new Dinklage difference, stop by one of our yards or visit us on the web at dinklagefeedyards.com.
Welcome back. We now turn our attention to Taiwan. While U.S. beef exports are regaining ground in much of Asia, a U.S. Meat Export Federation team recently visited one Asian market where U.S. beef is not only back, it's back in a big way. Brian Baxter has the story from Taiwan.
Visit a street market in Taipei and you may feel as though you've stepped back in time. But though many Taiwanese still shop at markets like these, big supermarkets and an international food culture are becoming more prevalent. This is the capital city of Taiwan, an island home to 23 million people. Here the economy is growing, and whether at retail or in restaurants, U.S. beef is a popular choice.
The Taiwanese market not only has it gotten back, but I mean it has way exceeded where we were. In fact, in 2010 it was at record numbers.
Taiwan is a great market for U.S. food and agricultural products. It's our 6th largest export destination overall. For beef in particular, we hit a record $220 million last year, a growth of more than 50% year over year, and accounting for 47% of the domestic market. So this is absolutely a very important market for U.S. food and agriculture.
I think that's one of the really, unique and positive things about Taiwan is that it is they have a very strong economy here. They have the purchasing power to go out. For them, they're always looking for, high quality, good value products, and that's where U.S. beef fits in perfectly.
Though 2010 was a record year, U.S. beef exports to Taiwan have been slowed this year by a market access issue, with concerns about ractopamine residues found in some shipments of U.S. beef. Even so, trade is continuing and demand for U.S. beef in Taiwan remains solid.
We had very strong growth last year. I'm not promising that will be repeated in the current year, but I think this current bump in the road will be over soon, and I think trade will resume at a good pace. and I'm looking forward to records in the coming year.
In fact, steakhouses featuring U.S. beef are growing in Taiwan, and the USMEF Market Expo team had the opportunity to see the impact U.S. beef is making in Taiwan's restaurants for themselves.
It's been a real shocker. I am not used to the Asian culture at all, and the restaurant we just ate in was serving certified Angus beef, and I was extremely happy with what I ate.
That was really probably the most surprising thing to me was the fact that we had U.S. beef almost every meal that we ate, and probably more than we really anticipated. It was of good quality, it was very nicely prepared, and it was a wonderful experience.
The U.S. Meat Export Federation has helped fuel the growth in U.S. beef in Taiwan's restaurants by working with chefs and conducting promotions.
And U.S. beef, actually they are so great to see. Most of the five-star hotel and high elegant restaurant here, they use a lot of the U.S. high-quality beef. I think the most of the product they like is what is grain-fed or corn-fed beef in Taiwan, and especially they're talking about the margarine.
If you like beef, you have to try U.S. beef because U.S. beef will show you the original flavor of beef and the true taste of the beef. We do love U.S. beef because it's the king of the beef, the best one.
With satisfied customers like that, it's no wonder Taiwan was the 5th largest export market for U.S. beef last year. In Taipei, I'm Brian Baxter reporting for NCBA's Cattleman to Cattleman.
Greg Haynes from the U.S. Meat Export Federation is back. And Greg, let's continue our discussion about international trade with a talk about Taiwan. A lot of people may not realize just how important Taiwan has been in our growth in terms of our overall export market. Tell us a little bit about what has caused this rapid growth in Taiwan.
Yeah, actually, Taiwan was really one of our key success stories in 2010. Exports had gone up over 50% for the year. Most of the market, Asia is probably really one of our key growth areas globally, and Taiwan was one of the ones really leading that charge. It was really the only Asian market or any of the other key markets that has actually exceeded the pre-BSE levels. So, we're actually selling more there than we were before BSE hit. So, in that sense, it's very, very positive. Yeah.
Now, I understand, though, that we have hit a bit of a snag over there in terms of market access. Can you tell us about what's going on there?
Yeah, earlier this year there were some shipments coming in and they had detected ractopamine in it. And unfortunately, Taiwan doesn't have an MRL or a residue level, set level for ractopamine. And so those shipments then were stopped and sent back. And this caused a lot of concern in the trade because they didn't know then if other shipments were going to come in and get sent back. There was also a lot of reporting in the media about, chemicals in U.S. beef. So there was a lot of concern, especially among these key trade buyers, that if they're going to bring in the product, either it's going to get sent back or the consumers aren't going to purchase it because they're too worried about it. Fortunately, what we saw is that even though there was some news reporting on it, it never really gained much traction. And so the demand from the consumers remained very, very solid. And so while we've had kind of a drop when this first occurred, it has rebounded and then it's disrupted the flow of product in a little bit, but it's definitely improved and has seen a little up and down. But the concerns that we were originally worried about haven't materialized.
Well, tell us more about that Taiwanese consumer. I mean, what do they like to eat in terms of U.S. beef, and what's changed to drive that demand?
Yeah. Well, Taiwan really, I think we're lucky in the sense that the Taiwan economy is very, very strong right now. So the consumers are really looking for high quality, good products, and U.S. beef is one of those products. And being, with a relative, a very low self-sufficiency rate, they have to bring those products in. Most of our competitors can't provide the kind of product that we can. And so we've really had a lot of success now in working really on the high-end areas, the top restaurants and hotels, getting in like steak items and middle meat cuts where those haven't come in the past. So one of the things we've really tried to push is this dry aging concept. What you've seen now is that a few of these high-end restaurants have started featuring dry aged U.S. steaks. And that has really created a buzz in the market. And so there's been a lot of media attention to this. And that's driving more and more restaurants and high-end hotels and different companies to start offering that as well. So you see this growth on the very high-end side, but you also have this continuing demand for the other cuts, which they would use in the more traditional cooking, like the barbecue and the hot pot pots and things like that.
Outstanding. Well, it sounds like good news moving forward.
Yeah, no, I think this year, once we get past all this, will still turn out to be a very good year for Taiwan.
That's great. We'll be back to take a look at the South Korean beef trade next. Stay with us.
Like you, Boehringer Ingelheim Vetmedica Incorporated knows the territory. With over 30 years' experience, you can rest assured that when you work with us, we work for you. We have an extensive line of vaccines and parasite control products for beef cattle and offer professional support in the field. We're continually bringing you innovative animal health solutions to help you build the most profitable beef operation possible. Boehringer Ingelheim. When it comes to your herd, we've got your back.
Quality hay starts with quality equipment. That's why it pays to go with the long green line. Get the hay tools you need to tackle everything, from the first cutting through the last bale of the season. Choose John Deere and get quality that lasts, reliability that stands the test of time, and resale value you can take to the bank. All backed by the finest dealer network in the land. John Deere. Nothing runs like a deer.
Get 0 for 48 or big cash discounts on select John Deere hay equipment through August 1st. There's never been a better time to trade. See your local John Deere dealer soon.
I am an NCBA member.
I am an NCBA member because NCBA provides me with the eyes and the ears, and most importantly, a voice on issues that affect me and my operation every day across the country.
I am an NCBA member.
I am an NCBA member because beef producers feed the world.
I am an NCBA member.
I am an NCBA member.
Join me today.
Welcome back. When it comes to U.S. beef exports, one of the great comeback stories last year was South Korea, where U.S. beef sales made a big gain. In fact, more than doubling in volume from the year before. Let's take a closer look at U.S. beef trade in South Korea as Brian Baxter reports.
From up high on a mountainside, the city of Seoul spreads across the horizon as far as the eye can see. The capital of a nation of 48 million people, at ground level, Seoul is busy, crowded, and home to one of the strongest economies in Asia. And whether in restaurants or grocery stores, it's clear many Koreans are putting U.S. beef back on their menu.
In a couple of weeks, we're going to open a new restaurant called Butcher's Cut, and we're going to specialize in steak menus, including the ribeye from the U.S.
There are more and more end users coming back to U.S. beef after they experience the quality and the safety of the U.S. beef. So the market is remarkably recovered right now, and we are looking forward to the more end users coming back to U.S. beef.
In 2010, we doubled our volume of beef exports to Korea. In volume, we reached 112,000 metric tons, and in terms of value, we were up 140% to $520 million.
Making those gains and getting U.S. beef accepted in Korea after the BSE case in 2003 was far from easy.
There was a lot of lingering doubts about beef safety here. There were a lot of concerns about whether the product was suitable for the Korean customer. And so we really had a two-step process. We not only had to come to an agreement that kept the market open in a viable and commercially viable way, but we also had to win the hearts of the customers back. And that took some time, but we feel like we're improving now. And certainly the past few months, the past year really has been very, very strong in Korea for U.S. beef.
One part of reassuring Korean consumers about the safety and quality of U.S. beef is a USMEF campaign called To Trust, featuring women from the U.S. beef industry sharing their stories in print and television ads.
지나치다 싶을 만큼 까다롭게
식탁의 건강을 지키.
Basically conveying the message that said, this is the beef that I serve to my own family, and I wouldn't serve anything to your family that I wouldn't serve to my own. And that was quite effective.
So Trust campaign is designed to deliver the message on the commitment of the U.S. beef producers and how it is produced in the U.S. So deliver the safety message to the Korean consumer in more the local voice.
Another key effort in Korea is in-store promotions, including one-on-one dialogue with consumers about U.S. beef safety and the opportunity to taste U.S. beef.
The important thing is that once they experience U.S. beef quality, they will choose U.S. beef. So I'm very much confident with that will be the trend, and then the more Korean consumer will come back to U.S. beef.
It's very gratifying to see such a good job of demonstrating the product. Has a very distinctive taste, a very distinctive aroma that really appeals to the customers. It was really gratifying to see customers taste it, go to the expert and talk to them about it, look into the meat case, see what cut they wanted, and eventually buy it. And that success story is being repeated all over Korea. The export numbers will tell us that.
In fact, so far in 2011, U.S. beef exports to Korea are running far ahead of last year's strong export numbers. In Seoul, I'm Brian Baxter for NCBA's Cattleman to Cattleman.
Greg Haynes with USMEF is back with us. And Greg, let's turn our attention to South Korea. You know, the history of beef trade has been a pretty interesting one to Korea. Tell us about that.
No, definitely. I think Korea's probably been one of our best success stories, but it's also been one of our biggest challenges. You probably recall back in 2009, after we thought we first had full access for the product, things started to really pick up. And then there was a TV show that issued a lot of very false, misleading information about beef and the beef industry and the dangers of the product. And Korea being one of the most wired countries in the world, that information just started spreading and perpetuating everywhere, and soon you had hundreds of millions or hundreds of thousands of people out there protesting, and it practically overthrew the government. So I mean, it was a very, very serious issue, and all this was really being driven by beef.
Yeah, it was quite a deal, but we've had some great success stories, and part of the success, I understand, is in this growth in demand has been due to the C2C campaign that you all have launched and been managing. Right. Tell folks a little bit about what that is.
Yeah, the C2C campaign was launched later in that year at the end of 2009. Initially, we were having a very, very difficult time just because the perceptions of the product were just so negative. But as things kind of worked out and the timing arrived, we were working with a lot of the key retailers there and other accounts and trying to get the product out there. We also we designed this theme and the image of C2C to really highlight the different aspects and the different facets of the production system in the U.S. and especially how women producers or consumers or the safety personnel and scientists are involved in the production process to really try to connect with the Korean housewives who are really the main purchasers in the country there. So by having that kind of woman-to-woman message, I think it really clicked. We did it very humbly, I think, in a very positive way, and it gained a lot of traction. And so the consumer sentiments have steadily been increasing. And so we've been able to get in with more of the different companies that are featuring U.S. beef, and then even getting these companies now to give testimonials and promote the product as well. So it's really starting to take off.
And what's your thoughts about this coming year in Korea?
Yeah, this year, last year was actually a really good year in Korea. We doubled exports there, and through February this year, exports have doubled again. So it's very, very good. But still, we're at a much lower level than where we used to be. We're still only at about 40% of the pre-BSE levels. What we want to do now is really kick off a very aggressive 5-year campaign, still featuring these same themes, but to really get back in there and displace our competitors, Australia, New Zealand, and the domestic products as well. But, again, taking a very positive approach and trying to capture more of that market share.
Well, I think all of us as cattle people recognize how important these international markets are. We appreciate what you and the entire MEF team are doing to grow those international markets for us.
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, we appreciate your support and the support of all the producers.
Absolutely. Learn more about international trade and the U.S. Meat Export Federation by visiting their website at usmef.org. We'll be right back.
Join America's cattle industry for the 2011 Summer Conference in Orlando, Florida. It's a great opportunity to meet your fellow cattlemen and women, plus spend time planning for the future of your operation and our great industry. Bring the whole family and join us in Orlando, Florida for the 2011 Cattle Industry Summer Conference, August 1st through 4th. For details, call 1-866-USA-BEEF or visit us at beefusa.org. We'll see you there.
I'm Kevin Ochsner, host of NCBA's Cattleman to Cattleman. Check us out at cattlemantocattleman.org or on Facebook and Twitter.
Quality matters to me because our local farmers and ranchers entrust us with the marketing of their livestock each and every week. It's their livelihood and how they provide for their families. Also, friends and families in the community eat at our cafe and watch the auction to be connected with the beef industry. I take great pride in knowing that my livestock auction keeps this community strong and provides our consumers with a great image of the beef they eat. I'm very proud of what we will do here today.
It's no secret that for companies who want to reach cattlemen and market their products to the cattle industry, the annual NCBA trade show is the place to be. Now, when it comes to marketing foods, including U.S. beef in Asia, where is the meeting ground to connect with those potential customers? Cattleman to Cattleman reporter Brian Baxter has the answer as he takes us back to Tokyo to visit FoodX.
Think of anything in the world you might eat or drink, and you'll likely find it at FoodX, a huge 4-day show that brings the world to Tokyo.
It's unbelievable. First, the building itself is, I don't know, probably 2 acres just looking at it. It's unbelievable, and the way it's sorted out by countries is pretty interesting too. So you can see what coming from Australia or Korea or Taiwan or just wherever. So it's really interesting. I've actually never been in a trade show this large.
FoodX is the biggest event that the ATO puts on each year, and we're very excited about putting this show together. It's a lot of work. It's 3-4 months of hard work, but it's so rewarding when we have the companies come and make the contacts and make the sales. And that's the most important thing, that they use this opportunity to make those sales.
2011 marked the 36th year for FoodX, which draws a crowd of over 80,000 people, including food buyers from all over Asia.
FoodX is the largest food show in Asia, so its importance, I think, is you can't stress it enough. There's buyers actually from not only Japan, but you have buyers from all of Asia. So you have Korea, Taiwan, China. They all come here to see kind of the trends, the food trends, things that are happening in Japan. Japan's always kind of a leader in food trends within the whole region here. So a lot of companies, organizations like MEF, it gives us a chance to really show what's happening, to provide new merchandising ideas, to provide, new cut ideas.
FoodX features pavilion after pavilion full of food exhibits, including U.S. beef competitors such as Canada and Mexico. The U.S. Meat Export Federation has always had a strong presence at FoodX, meeting with potential customers, providing information, and the opportunity to taste U.S. beef.
I think, tasting is very important, because some people, they do not know the quality of U.S. beef and pork, especially beef. We could not import U.S. beef for 2.5 years, because of a BSE. So especially younger buyers, they do not know about U.S. beef.
Well, I haven't had a chance to look around very much so far, but I can certainly tell just the few minutes that we've had here is that it is a tremendous opportunity to promote U.S. beef. And I hope that I can convey that story back to my colleagues in the beef industry, that their checkoff dollars are truly being very well spent in terms of promoting our products.
The presence at FoodX is just one example of ongoing USMEF efforts to grow the market for U.S. beef not only in Japan but throughout Asia. Reporting from Tokyo, I'm Brian Baxter for NCBA's Cattleman to Cattleman.
What an amazing and educational show. We'll be right back.
Education, Networking, opportunity, and fun. That's what you'll find at the 2012 Cattle Industry Annual Convention and NCBA Trade Show in Nashville, Tennessee. Get your ticket to ride with your fellow cattlemen and women in the country music capital of the world. You'll find cutting-edge education, top-of-the-line technology, and entertainment that can't be beat. Don't miss your ticket to ride to the Cattle Industry Annual Convention and Trade Show in Nashville, Tennessee, February 1st through the 4th, 2012. For more information, visit beefusa.org.
I am an NCBA member.
I am an NCBA member.
I'm an NCBA member because NCBA provides a uniform voice for all segments of the industry.
I am an NCBA member.
I'm an NCBA member because it's important that all cattle producers band together to get our message across to protect our livelihoods and make ranching sustainable for the next generation.
I am an NCBA member.
I am an NCBA member because especially in today's political climate, it is important that we have one unified voice from pasture to plate, and NCBA gives us that opportunity.
I am an NCBA member.
Join me today.
Seasons change, but year in, year out, year round, it's Crystalix season. With specific supplements for weaning stress in fall. Protein for free calving in winter. Calving in spring. And minerals and fly control in summer. For low cost per head per day supplements, every season is Crystalix season.
Lots of cowmen put a little extra into their calves, hoping it'll bring them another nickel at the sale, like preconditioning, early weaning, or for specialty markets. But how can the buyer trust your claim? Old vaccine bottles or your ratty tally book? Truth is, this little green ear tag will be all you need. That's what IMI Global does, third-party verification. The seal of approval, like the nutrition label on your Twinkie. Did I say Twinkie? IMIGlobal.com.
Let's face it, you don't think a lot about your trailer hitch. You use it and forget it. We understand. But at B&W, we think about it. Short nights, long hauls, never-ending chores. The unthinkable. We think about it all, so you don't have to. B&W. Trusted.
As time goes by, I find myself muttering. It used to be beneficial muttering, like when I was throwing a rope. I'd concentrate, tip down, wrist on top of my head, get into position. Or when I was attempting to learn golf. Okay, head down, arms straight, follow through. I have so many poems in my head. When I'm preparing for a program, somewhere the day before, I'll be refreshing them in my memory, like it came from out of nowhere, like a prolapse in the night. Or, if God intended cows to swim, He'd given them all flippers. But now it's not uncommon for me to be by myself, muttering to a radio commentator, or a handyman jack, or a water hose. Oh well, here's Pop's story. I came across a neighbor who was working in his shop. His real name was Herbert, but we all just called him Pop. He's gotten hard of hearing, which can happen growing old. I guess the roar of table saws and planers took their toll. One afternoon last winter, I was on an ambulation. I strolled up to his shop door, and I heard a conversation. I could see no one was with him, just his coat hung on the shelf, but I knew, because I knew him, he was talking to himself. Should I cut this off exactly at 3/4 of an inch? Or 9/16 for safety's sake, 'cause it's sure a lead pipe cinch it'll be too short to fit if I'm off a saw blade width. But I know how long the space is, 'cause I measured it. I did. Hey, better safe than sorry. Measure twice, cut once, I say. Well, if I have to saw it over, there's no sweat. I've got all day. But why bother working extra if I know I'm right to start? That's the point of carpentering, not about me looking smart. Well, it's a chicken house, for Josh's sakes. It's not the Taj Mahal. But I pride myself on good work, be it Bunyan-esque or small. I'm gonna make the cut 3/4. It's just a simple truss, and it really doesn't matter. Ain't nobody here but us. This is Baxter Black from out there.
Thanks, Baxter, for that clarification. In this week's Legacy Photos, a special look at the U.S. Meat Export Federation team that took a tour of Asia. Let's take a look. Send us your photos. To do so, visit us at cattleman2cattleman.org. Thanks so much for joining us for this week's special edition of NCBA's Cattleman to Cattleman. We'll see you right back here next week on RFD TV.